be a family with one another. I pray that we look to you for everything. Bless these tithes and this offering, Lord God. Use it. Use it for what you have called us to use it for. We love you. We give you everything that we are and everything that we have. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Everybody said? As we receive the morning tithes and offering, you can take a seat. Well, welcome. We're so glad to see you. There are a bunch of announcements in the bulletin that you can check out for yourself. Some fun things that are happening that are coming up. One thing that I just want to point out to you is in July is our annual At the Movies series that we're going to be doing. And what we do is we watch movies together and we talk about a different movie every week. But we also rent out a whole movie theater to go see a movie together. So we are going to see Toy Story 4 on Friday, July 5th. So if you would like to come with us, you can do that. We don't have tickets at the table yet. We just set everything up with the theater, and then they're sending me the tickets, so we'll have them for next week. So you can pick up your tickets for that. But it's going to be really, really fun. The movie, so if you are really excited about Toy Story, it comes out, I think a couple weeks before, like the end of June or something like that. So this is a test of patience. Or if you just want to see it twice. But we're going to go see it Friday, July 5th. The way that this works is we rent out a theater at Snowden, and we want to sell all the tickets, and so that we don't lose money. But we're not making money on the tickets. We're just covering the cost of. We're not asking you to pay more than what we paid for them. They're $14 a ticket, and it's first come, first served. So every year we sell out. So what I'm telling you is, don't wait to get your tickets. So just so you know, there are 66 of them. That you can get. And many of you are like, that's the devil's number. I agree, but that's okay. Well, I don't want to go more than that because I want to make sure that we fill it all out. But so in the coming weeks, make sure that you stop by. Don't wait until the last week. Every year, this happens. Just so you know, every year I get calls the day of that we're going to see the theater. Hey, you got any tickets left? And I'm like, no, we don't have any tickets left. I've been telling you for over a month. Okay, so you got a whole month. So don't wait to get them, and you can do that. But today we're kicking off a brand new series called Vision. And so we got a bunch of boxes up here with some different things on it. And for the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about the vision for the church, the vision for City on a Hill according to the Bible. So really we're talking about the vision for churches as a whole. That's what I'm going to talk about today mainly. The church general, not just specifically City on a Hill, but really what every church should look like and what every church should pursue, and then how City on a Hill fits into that. And so we're going to talk about some really, really important things over the next few weeks. Basically, we're going to be asking questions like, what are we doing as a church? Where are we going? Why are we doing the things that we do? And what's the purpose behind everything that we do as a church? It's important that we talk about these things because it is valuable for us to know. A lot of times we come to church and we don't even know really what we're doing. We just are doing church, right? We just kind of show up and this is church. We show up to church on Sunday mornings and we sing a few songs, we hear a sermon, and then we go about our way. But we are supposed to do more than that. We're called to do more than that. And you are called to do more than that. You are called to fit in a bigger way than that. So I don't know what your experience in church has been like throughout your life, but at City on a Hill, we want you to ask questions. We want you to feel welcome, to ask anything that is on your mind, that is on your heart, that you've had throughout your entire life. And if I can't answer them, then I'll just tell you I don't know the answer to that. But we are a transparent place. We are a place where we say nothing is off limits. You can see our entire budgets. You can see salaries and how much I make and how much we pay Lene. You can see where all of your money is going to. You can see you can actually, I don't know if you even know this, but we do a board meeting once a month. And you are welcome to attend that because we don't have anything to hide. You actually can attend any board meeting that we do. If it's something confidential that we are talking about involving a person or a situation, that we may ask you to step out for a few minutes. But you are welcome to come and sit in our board meetings and see everything that we do and the decisions that we make and why we make them and what we're talking about and where we're going. Because this is not something that we're hiding from you. This is something that we want all of us to jump on board together and say, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. So that's what we're going to be talking about for this month. And I want you to be excited about it because this is just as much your home as it is mine or anybody else's. This is all of our homes. This is our family that we're working together. But we talk about this a lot, and if you're curious or about anything, you can always ask questions, and this is the place where we are willing to try to tackle difficult questions and try to figure out where we're going from there because we're all in this together. But if you've been here for a few months, then you may remember a series that we did in November. Probably not. You probably don't remember it because most people don't remember what I talked about last week. It was science in the Bible. But in November, we did a series called Focused. And we were talking about throughout that whole month, we were talking about the DNA of City on a Hill. Who are we? What really inspires us? Where are we going to? Who we are, what do we represent? And we broke down our mission statement, which hopefully you've heard it before. It's in your bulletin every week. You've probably heard us say it a lot of times. Hopefully you know it. But our mission statement is, we are people living like Jesus to lead people to Jesus. That's everything that we are, everything that we are doing. Everything falls underneath that umbrella. Live like Jesus to lead people to Jesus. Pastor Lene is wearing a shirt that says, we're living and loving like Jesus. Ira was wearing it up here on the stage. That's everything that we are. That's what it falls underneath of. So in this series, instead of talking about our DNA, our goal is more to talk about what are our next steps. Where are we going from here? So in November, we talked about this is who we are. For this series, we're casting vision. And we're talking about where are we going? What are the next steps that we are going to be taking for us as a church family? But before we dive into that, I want to start at the picture of what the church is supposed to be according to Scripture. That's where we have to start here. Our vision, our mission, our DNA, everything comes from this. Doesn't come from this. Doesn't come from my head or anybody else's. It comes from right here. And many people have different thoughts when they hear the word church. And hopefully it's good, but I'm by no means ashamed of who I am or what I believe or being a pastor. But when people find out that not only am I a Christian, but I'm a pastor, it changes things. It changes things. It's just the nature of the beast. Even amongst Christians. A lot of times there are people who are churchgoers and people who've been going to church for a long time, and they may just meet me or my brother even, or whatever, and they're like, or even my sister, and they find out that she has two brothers who are pastors, and they're like, oh no, this has got to be a weird family. And they're not wrong, but they're like, okay. It just changes. The mood changes when people find out what I do. And it's not always fun, but the reason why it changes is because everyone has an opinion when it comes to church based on their experience, their background, their history, their own theology, their religion, whatever it may be. There are all these different things that come into play when people hear the word church or Jesus or Christians or Christianity, and we can think a certain way. You're here, so that's good. So hopefully when you hear those words, it's a positive thing for you. But we realize that not everybody has that spin. Just recently, I was walking around in my neighborhood, and I take my daughter for walks, and we have a dog we take for walks. And there's another mom in the neighborhood who has couple kids around the same age as Camden. And so I run into her all the time. Lauren and I run into her all the time, and we become friendly with her, and we talk with her, and we say things, and like, oh, hey, and we welcome her to the, well, she was actually in the neighborhood before us, but we just are nice. We're friendly with one another. And I really like her. She's fun to talk to and all these sort of things. And so I was talking to Lauren, and I was like, oh, man, we should invite them to church. Her and her husband is really nice, and we should invite them to church, and that would be great. And she was like, yeah, we should do that. So the next time that I was walking the neighborhood, I saw her, and I was like, all right, this is my opportunity. And just so you know, inviting people to church is even awkward for a pastor, just so you know. I realize that. But I still do it. So should you. But I'm walking the neighborhood, and I see her, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to invite her to church. And this was actually last summer, and we were going to the movies. And so I said, this is perfect opportunity to invite her and her kids to come to see The Incredibles with us, and we got this whole theater. And so I saw her, and we were talking, and I was like, hey, my wife and I were thinking of you and your family, and we didn't know if you would ever be interested, but I don't even know if you know this about me, but I'm actually a pastor. We started a church, and we're actually renting out a whole theater at Snowden, and we would love to invite you and your family to come and join us. And we do church just right around the corner at Bella Spring Elementary School if you ever would like to come. And immediately, the mood just changed. It was just like, oh. And now when we see each other in the neighborhood, it's so awkward. Because I think it's because I told her that I'm a pastor, and now all of a sudden it's just like, oh, he's a pastor, he's going to be really weird, he's going to be really strict about everything, and now all of a sudden there's all these thoughts that go in. It's awkward, it's weird. I hate it when I go golfing, and not going golfing, I love golfing, but I hate it when I go golfing and I'm paired up with people that I don't know. Like me and a friend, we go, and sometimes you get paired up with two other people you don't know, and it's always great, it's always fun, and you get to know them, and you're golfing, and it's always around hole number 7 that the question comes up. Well, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, great. Well, I'm a pastor, and immediately they just start apologizing for everything they said the first 6 holes. Immediately. Oh, okay, like, because on the golf course, guys can get pretty gross. It's the locker room talk, right? So, which is if that's okay. So anyways, and they immediately start apologizing, and then the rest of the time we're playing golf, it's super awkward. And they're like, oh, okay, and no conversation. They immediately just go to their car. It's nothing at all. There was a time where I was at a restaurant even, and I was hanging out with some friends. We're at a restaurant, and the waitress was super nice, and we were talking to her and everything, and she was super friendly with us, but she was also like making some really inappropriate jokes. And but it's like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. And so she was doing that, and then eventually she would just like, oh, so what do you guys do for a living? Oh, great. It happens all the time. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. That's my least favorite part about being a pastor, is people change who they are once they find out what I do. And maybe that happens to you when people find out that you go to church on Sundays. Or maybe they find out you go to church on Sundays, and they're like, really? You don't seem like the type that would go to church on Sundays, and that's on you. But I don't know what the attitude is, or what the thoughts go through people's mind when they hear church. This is a big thing that we have to deal with when it comes to the word church or Christianity, and people can think multiple things. Maybe they think corrupt. Maybe they think loving. Maybe they think welcoming, unwelcoming. Maybe they think judgmental. Maybe they think selfish. Maybe they think generous, stingy. Maybe they think that it's work, or maybe they think that it's a community of people, which is great. Maybe they think that it's just all conservative politics. Whatever it may be, there are all of these thoughts that go into it. So this week, we're going to start at the very, very basics of what church is, at the very beginning, before denominations, before theological debates, before this type of church that we know it to be, before missional strategies, before youth ministry, before children's ministry, before churches even started playing Oceans on Sunday mornings. Before any of that, we broke down what is church. What is the denomination? What is the theology behind church? So what did Jesus intend for church to be? I think it's a great question, because we should all be asking this: would Jesus attend our church today? That's a huge question that we need to ask. If Jesus were walking the face of this earth, would he be willing to walk in these doors and attend church with us? Or would he walk in these doors and start flipping tables? That's a big question. And I know what side I want our church to be on. But I believe in many of our churches today, Jesus is going to be flipping more tables than he is going to be willing to attend. Because I think a lot of us have gotten it wrong. And maybe you've grown up in a church where they've gotten it wrong. Maybe you've experienced things that aren't healthy or aren't proper or aren't the right way to go, or it's not theologically correct, or it's not what Jesus has called us to do. So let's start by talking about just the word church. The word church comes from the Greek word ekklesia. Okay? And now this is the first thing, when we're talking about church, this is where it comes from. And it's interesting that ekklesia was never used to describe a temple, a synagogue, a building, a chapel, or a tabernacle in the New Testament. Never once was the word ekklesia, which is where we get the word church from, that was never once used to describe any of those things. Instead, ekklesia is always referred to as the Christian assembly and was used to describe the local community of believers and the universal collection of Christians. In other words, people. Ekklesia is people who believe in Jesus Christ and are following him and are trying to learn more about him. Ekklesia is not city on a hill. Ekklesia is not the local church with a steeple. Ekklesia is not a synagogue. Ekklesia is not any of those things. Instead, ekklesia is an assembly of Christians. And the first mention of the word ekklesia is found in Matthew chapter 16, which we're going to read. It'll be on the screen. But Jesus asked his disciples who they think Jesus is. He says to them, who do you think I am? What do people say about me? What do you hear? What is your opinion about me? How would you describe me? And it's really interesting because Peter replies with, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And this is how Jesus responds in Matthew chapter 16, verses 17 through 20. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, which is Peter, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Then he warned his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Christ. So, this is where the church starts. Church ekklesia that we're talking about. Jesus is the founder of the church, but he says he's going to build it on Peter. Peter is really active in the early church, which we're going to talk about in a second. But I love one specific thing about this passage that it says. That's this. No matter what, the church will never be stopped. The church ekklesia will never be stopped. Because he says right there, the gates of Hades will not overcome it. And now there is a lot of talk in our society and in our world about declining numbers in church attendance. Church attendance is going down. It's suffering. It's actually increasing in many other countries. It's on the rise in other countries, but in America, it's declining. Church numbers are going down. Less people are coming to church. More people are turning away from God. More people are turning away from Jesus. And while this is accurate, it's very accurate actually, the church is not going anywhere. But, now you may be thinking church in this context. Church in the sense of we walk up, we show up on a Sunday morning. Has to be Sunday morning because you can't do church any other time, right? Has to be Sunday morning. You walk in, you get your coffee, you sit in your chair, you sing a few songs, we hear a sermon, we go about our way. Like that church in that context is not going anywhere. But the truth is, church always needs to be transforming. Church always needs to be evolving. Church always needs to be changing. And many Christians have a problem with this because we want the church that we always have known. We want what we grew up with. And that's just not in regards to church. That's in regards to our life. I'm a 90s kid. So there are times where I'm like, oh man, the 90s were the best. But if you grew up in the 80s, you're like, oh no, the 80s were the best. Every generation says, oh man, no, you don't know. This was the best. Why? Because it's what we grew up with. It's what we know. It's what we're comfortable with. It's in our DNA. It's who we are. It's what we love. All of those sort of things. So when it comes to church, oftentimes, many churches get to a place where they say, well, this is what we've always done. This is who we are. This is what we've been. And it worked in the past, so why can't it work now? And maybe that's true in some cases. But in reality, the world is changing. And if the church doesn't change with it, then we're going to be left behind. And then what's going to happen is all the people who love church to be the way that it was back in the day are eventually going to die. And then the next generation will not be around in the church. And this is a big problem. So what I'm telling you today is this. It's great that you love church the way that you love it. And I say this all the time, but it's not about you. It never has been, and it never will be. But instead, it's about Jesus. And so if we look at it and we say, you know what? We need to do it the way that we've always done it. And we're missing opportunity to reach people who don't know Jesus, then shame on us. Because what Jesus says here, he doesn't say, the church that you know and love will never be overcome. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, Hades will never overcome the church that you knew in the 90s. He doesn't say that. He doesn't guarantee that. He doesn't say, Hades will never overcome City on a Hill Community Church in the way that they do it because they know how to do it best. It doesn't say that. It never guarantees that you will always have church the way that you want it to be. Never guarantees that. Because it's not about you. Now you may be sitting here thinking in the context of, well, there will always be children's ministry. There will always be youth ministry. There will always be a service time at 10 o'clock. There will always be coffee. There will always be worship. There will always be a sermon. Not true. Jesus never guaranteed any of that. Never guaranteed any of it. He never said that Hades will never overcome Shane's preaching style. Never says that. But do you know what's interesting about this passage in Matthew 16? There is no reference to Sunday school, no reference to kids ministry, no reference to prime timers ministry. Now you may be saying, what is prime timers? It's old people ministry is what it is. That's what it is. I have patting people in the back. All right? There's no reference to men's ministry. There's no reference to women's ministry. There's no reference to softball ministry. There's no reference to hipster coffee versus Folgers coffee. There's no reference to dress code. There's no reference about hymns versus Hillsong or whatever other music that you like. No reference to any of that. So what I'm telling you is, if you're holding on to that, then you are missing it. That's not church. It happens in church and it happens within the context of church, but that's not church Ekklesia. That's church your style and your preference that you like. And it works sometimes and it's great sometimes, but if we're holding on to sacred cows, then we're missing it. There's no room for turfism in the church of God. There's no room for, this is my ministry, and this is what I've always done, and this is what I'm always going to do, and you can't take it from me. There's no room for that. And if we're more about that, then what it means is we're prideful on the ministry that we have, and we're not prideful on the ministry that Jesus has called us to do. This is huge. Now you are coming here on Sunday morning, so that means that you are a part of a church plant that's been around for 3 years. So this really is not as big of a problem for us right now, but I'm assuming that you've attended other churches that have been around for a long time. And I'm assuming that you have experienced this at some point or another. And if you never have, praise God. That's a good thing. You don't want to experience this. But even though we are a newer church, we are not clear of this. Because we've been doing things for a certain way for 3 years. But it's so easy. This happens without us even realizing it. where we get to a place where we say, well, this is what we do. This is who we are. This is how we've always done it, and we're going to keep doing it this way because whatever reason. Because it's what we know. It's what we're comfortable with. We get in a routine. There's nothing wrong with routine. But this is not the only way to do church, my friends. It's not the only way. You could actually do church at your local coffee house. You gather with some people, some friends, some family, some not friends. I don't care. You gather with a group of people, and you read the Bible together, and you learn about Jesus. That's church. You can do church in your living room. You have some people over, you go through some things, you go through a study. Now, the difference is it has to be an assembly of people. So, by definition, there needs to be other people than just you. This is really becoming a common trend now, where people say, I'm just doing me, and I'm doing church at home by myself. And this is why we have a live stream, and I always hesitate. I'm like, I don't want people to be like, oh, perfect. Church in bed. It's not church, my friends. It's not church. The trend has been, you know what? Why do I need to show up? Why do I need to be around? And why do I need to wake up early on Sunday morning and go to church? What's the point? Why can't I just do it myself? Why can't I'll read the Bible, I'll pray, I'll sing some songs. I've got Spotify, I'll play some music. I can do church at my home, in my pajamas, with my cup of coffee, and not have to leave. Why can't I do that? Because it's about being around other people as well. See, Ekklesia does not say personal devotions. Ekklesia is an assembly of followers of Jesus Christ. We have to realize that. And the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I'm here today to say to you, the church universal will not be stopped. But your personal preferences and opinions about church, maybe. And that's okay. That's okay. So in Acts chapter 2, if the church will not be stopped, then what should it look like? In Acts chapter 2, it talks about the beginning of the early church. The whole book of Acts is an account of the beginning of the early church by Luke, and he's documenting how the gospel spread from a small community of people in Jerusalem to the empire of Rome. How did it spread so quickly and rapidly, and how did it ultimately spread all over the world, globally? So in Acts chapter 2, it talks about this, and the first fellowship of believers or followers of Jesus Christ are described in this way. Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. It's on the screen. It says this: they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common, selling their possessions and goods. They gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So what is the church? What should it look like? How did it start, and why was it successful? The reason why is because the church was devoted to three things according to Luke in the book of Acts. The first thing is this: the church was devoted to learning about Jesus. They were devoted to this. They were committed to this. Everything. See, if you are not learning, then you are not growing. This is what I was talking about after worship. If we get to a place where we stop learning, where we stop pursuing Jesus, then we are stagnant and we're not growing. A church should be teaching about Jesus, not about my opinion or your opinion or anybody else's opinion. The church should be preaching this and this only. Preaching about the gospel and how it affects our daily life. Because we can always learn more. No matter who you are, no matter how much studying you've done, no matter how many times you've read the Bible, maybe you read it cover to cover every year or every 6 months or every month. Great. I actually had a teacher when I was at Bible college, Washington Bible College, who read the Bible all the way through every month. Isn't that insane? Must have had no free time. Every month, he read it cover to cover. And many of you are like, I haven't done that once. And that's okay. What I'm saying to you is this. If we're not learning, we're not growing. And if he was willing to read it every month, he still was getting things out of it because this is alive. This is active. This is always teaching. And I can read the same passage in here 20 times and learn something every time. It's the truth. That's the way that this is. And if you don't believe me, try it. Try it. Because I'm telling you, God speaks when you are learning about him. So we can always learn more. And the amazing part about the Bible is there's always more to reveal to us. And that happens because we are at different points in our life, experiencing different things, and at different places in life. I'm a different person now than I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. I've experienced different things, and different things are happening. So we get in different places in life, and that's why when we go back and we read something and we see something new, it's because we have a different perspective based on the last time that we read it. It's amazing how this works. So I'm praying that you don't come and you just say, I'm just coming, I've heard it all before. I got it. I know what you're going to say. I know every story. I know every sermon. I've heard all of your dumb stories that you've given me every single time. I get it. I know it. But I heard a pastor say this to me once when I was younger, because I grew up in the church. If you're not in awe of the gospel every time that you read it, then you don't understand it. Because it's the most amazing thing that there is. So if this is ho-hum to you, then you don't get it. If this is, I've been there, heard that, seen that, I know it, then you don't know it. You don't understand it. Because this has changed the way of life. This has changed my heart. This has changed the way that I go about my daily living. Because it's active and it's powerful and it's all-knowing and there's so much wisdom in it. There's so much that we can get out of this because God has entered this. So if you're in the place where you're like, yeah, I know. You don't know. You don't actually get it. But if the church is not teaching Jesus, then it isn't the church. But if the church is more concerned about whatever it is that it wants to talk about or like the latest problem that's happening and that had nothing to do with Jesus or nothing to do with the Bible or whatever it may be, then if we're not learning about Jesus and what Jesus has to say about a situation, then that needs to be a red flag. Everything is living like Jesus to lead people to Jesus. Remember, everything. And that's how corruption happens when we don't do that. That's how churches have gone the wrong direction. This week I was looking up different videos on televangelists. The worst. And I saw this video of Jesse Duplantis and Kenneth Copeland. And if you don't know who they are, good. But they're televangelists and they get on. And I read a whole article about how this actually works because whenever I hear anything about televangelists getting money from people, I'm like, what? Why? How does that happen? And I watched this video of those two guys, and they were having and it's always on late at night, and it's in a way that takes advantage of people who are hurting. It's the whole purpose behind what they do. And they were saying they already have private jets in their life. And they were saying, Jesse Duplantis was saying, I was sitting on my plane, and I was happy, I was content, I was good to go. And I felt, and I was praying, I was talking to God, and God said to me, well, is this all I can do? And Jesse Duplantis was like, whoa, God, I have a plane, I'm great, I don't know what else I would need. Yeah, this is great. And God challenged me, and he said, do you think I can't do more than this? And God was telling me I needed a newer plane and a newer jet because I needed to travel, I needed to trust God more because God can do anything. And he's taking advantage of people. And he says, so I need you. Do you believe in the faith of God? And what you can do is when you plant a seed, they don't call your money money. They call it a seed. When you plant a seed by giving money to me, then it will grow and you will prosper. And I was watching, I was just sick to my stomach. But do you know why corruption like that happens? It happens because we don't know what the Bible says. It happens because we haven't done our research. It happens because we just take somebody's word for it and we trust somebody and we think, okay, they're a pastor. It's a person who only wants what's best for me. Surely they're leading me in the right direction, and we trust, and we don't do our own research, and then we get taken advantage of. So I say all this for this. You must be learning about Jesus. Don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Go home and do the research. Go home and learn about it. Go home and find out even more. I'm going to teach you one thing here. I'm going to try at least. And that's what we should be teaching here. But when you go home and you do the research, and then when you come in next Sunday, and if I say anything that doesn't line up with Jesus, then you can call me out on it. And you have my permission to do so. Not that you need it. You have Jesus' permission to do so. See, this is huge. That's why when we don't learn, when we aren't growing, if we're not devoted, that's a key word, if we're not devoted to learning about Jesus, then we are vulnerable to pursue things that lead us astray. Have to be devoted to it. The second thing that the church in Acts was devoted to, it was devoted to people. And in other words, church should be doing life together. We should be doing life together. We should be active. We should have relationships with one another. We should see each other outside of this building. We should have experiences and grow with one another. That's why we do things like the women's tea. That's why we do things like the men's camping trip this coming weekend, where if you want to come, we're going camping this weekend, guys. Anybody wants to come, it's not too late. That's why we do those things. That's why we do things like softball. That's why we do things like go to the movies together. That's why we do those sort of things. It's so that we can grow closer together. That's why we do things like family lunches after church on certain Sundays. That's why we do those things, because it is so important that we spend time with one another. And I realize I'm an extrovert. I can spend time with people every day, and I'd be like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's go have fun. Like, that's what I like doing. But I realize not everybody's like that. Westlows, I realize it, okay? I realize not everybody's extroverts, and sometimes people are introverts. I get it. And I realize that can be overwhelming to certain people. So I'm not saying that you need to hang out with people as much as I hang out with people. But I am saying this. If you just walk in these doors and walk out and have no relationships, you're not doing church. You're not doing church Ekklesia. That's not church. What I'm saying is this. Every time that we do a family lunch, when we start rolling out those tables, and you're like, that's my cue to leave, you're not doing church. If you're like, oh no, another event's coming up, how do I avoid this when Pastor Shane comes and asks me to go to it? You're not doing church. And I don't say that to make you feel bad, but if you're being convicted, that's God and that's not me, then that's between you and God. Because church is devoted, committed to people. And if you're not devoted to people, you're not doing church. Here at City on a Hill, we are devoted to people. That's what we are all about. The church is not the church because of people, but church is church because we are committed to people. It's so important that we pursue one another. And then the last thing that the church in Acts was devoted to was a relationship with God. Because when it all comes down to it, when everything comes down to it, it's all about knowing God better. That's everything. Knowing Him more, talking with Him, spending time in prayer with Him, knowing Him. That's why we do everything that we do. That's why we teach. That's why we have relationships. That's why we do everything, is to know God more and closer and more personal. Everything is about your relationship with God. That's what the church should look like. Devoted to Jesus, learning about Him, devoted to people, spending time with one another, and devoted to prayer and knowing God more. That's the crux of everything. That's beyond denominations. That's beyond theology. That's beyond everything that you've ever known. That's the foundation and the baseline of what we do at church. The point of everything is that. My question to you is this. Are you devoted to these things? Because we try to set the vision as a staff and as a leader. We try to set the vision here at City on a Hill, but I can only do so much. The vision only takes hold when you own it. And remember, it's not my vision, it's God's vision. This is how the early church started. City on a Hill can only become that place if all of us own it, not just myself or Pastor Lene or Josh or our staff, anything like that. It's not just that. It's when all of us own it. And I'm asking you to be committed, because in our world today, the word commitment doesn't hold a lot of weight. We commit to something until something better comes up. Our word does not mean very much. I'm asking you to give me your word, that you'll be devoted to those three things: learning about Jesus, relationships with people, and growing closer to God. It's everything. That is church Ekklesia, and that Hades will never overcome. That will never, never, never be stopped. So I'm going to invite the worship team up as we get ready to close. And I want you to think about your experience with church, your history, your background, everything that you've gone through with church, and everything that you've experienced here at City on a Hill. And I want you to think about, are we doing those three things? How can we be better at those three things? Teaching, fellowship, and prayer. How can we be better at those three things? We've been trying to learn so far. Now I want to ask you to pray and talk to God. Build that relationship with Him. And then once we finish, I want you to go and talk to somebody who's not in your family. And have a relationship with somebody. Because in order for this place to be home, we have to own it. Amen? Let's stand and let's sing.
Calling. the precious blood of Jesus Christ.
God, our prayer is that as a community, as the church Ekklesia, our prayer is that we set our eyes on you, that our vision is on you and what you have called for the church, where you have called us to go. God, I pray that we represent your love, that we are learning about you and teaching about you, that we are fellowshipping together and doing life together and spending time with one another, and that we are knowing you better, praying to you, thinking about you, worshiping you, growing in our relationship with you. I pray that this is a place where those things happen. And when those things happen, life change happens. I pray that we take ownership of this community, that our hearts are so invested in the church Ekklesia that we can't help but be committed and be devoted. God, you blow me away with how you change lives. We are committed to you. So help us, God, to know what you have called for us. Help us as we leave this place. Help us to take the church with us every day. Help us to live like you, to lead people to you. To everything that we are, oh God. We thank you for loving us. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. And everybody said, as you go today, give somebody a hug. All right, see you back next week.